Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is heal. Let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear heal used or see it used can mean to cause a wound, an injury, or some person to become sound or healthy again. So we're starting in a place of injury and we're improving or getting better. Related to that is the second definition. Heal can be used to mean to alleviate a person's distress or anguish. With this particular definition, you might think of grief, kind of extreme sadness after maybe the loss of a loved one. And that idea that the pain lessens or the pain is not as intense. That's what's being described here in the second definition. A third way you can use the verb heal means to correct or put right some undesirable situation. And related to that is the fourth definition, to patch up or correct division. With these third and fourth definitions, you might think of disputes, people who maybe at one time were friends, but there's some kind of disagreement, maybe a fight, right? Something has to happen to improve that situation, right? Correct it, make it better. Or maybe those individuals need to apologize, kind of patch up and figure out why they felt divided and recover from that. For now, you should know that heal is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing, and that forms healing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Now, our base verb, heal, ends in a voiced sound. This means when I add the ed ending, I'm just going to make a D sound, and I'm not going to add an extra syllable to the verb when I say it. The past tense and the participle forms of the verb should sound like this: healed, healed. Now, there are a few phrasal verbs that I think it might be good for us to review. The first one you might encounter is to heal of. This is used to describe the action of curing someone of a particular ailment. So this could be an illness and injury. An example of this in a sentence might be, who can heal her of this excruciating pain? So many times people are in search of doctors, medical professionals that might allow them to improve or cure a particular illness, right? So here, this might be someone who is really searching for another who is able to figure things out and make them better. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to heal over. So generally, this is used with a type of injury where your skin has broken. So maybe it's a scrape or a cut, but we're talking about sort of that process of mending, kind of things returning back to an uninjured state. An example of this: the cut healed over in about 2 weeks. Right? So kind of means, right, you had that process of maybe a little kind of skin growing up and over and covering, and eventually maybe you're no longer able to see it. Another phrasal verb you might encounter is to heal up. This is used a few different ways. We'll talk about 3 ways to use it. So one way just goes back to that first definition where we're talking about that process of a wound or an injury, kind of coming back from it. I shouldn't keep saying healing, but the idea that you are being returned to good health. An example of this: will this cut heal up on its own? Right? Sometimes when things are very bad, you might need stitches or something else to help with that process of mending. Another phrasal verb you might or another way to use, pardon, another way to use heal up means to recover or be restored to health after an illness or injury. Example of this: he's been healing up at home for the last 2 weeks. Right? So just another way to say he's been recovering. A third way to use heal up means to repair or restore someone or something to health. An example of this: our team will heal you up in no time. Might be kind of a promise that a medical professional is making. Maybe as you visit an urgent care or doctor's office or something of that. So the person is saying, we are going to repair and restore you to good health. Now, let's continue using our verb of the day in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we'll practice the simple past tense and the simple present. Let's start with the past tense. We use the simple past tense to talk about completed actions. And generally, these are actions that occurred at a known point in the past. Many times with simple past tense sentences, you see time signals. Could be a word like yesterday, could be a phrase like 2 weeks ago. It could even be a specific date in the past. But the thing you should remember is that not every sentence is going to have that time signal. So it might be understood as part of a longer conversation or as part of a longer piece of writing that we are speaking about a specific point in the past. The nice thing about making sentences in the simple past tense is that our pattern, our structure to the sentence is going to stay the same. So in the affirmative, you start with your subject and then use that ed form of the verb since it's a regular verb. Let's take a look at an example. The orangutan applied the plant to his face and the wound closed up and healed in a month. I don't know if you saw this news story in the last few weeks or months, but scientists were able to observe this animal out in the wild treating a cut or a wound on its face. And this is something that had not been previously observed. So it was kind of an exciting discovery or an exciting observation. So here, right, we've got an example of an animal doing something to bring its skin back or mend it, restore it to good health. Now, if you want to make a negative sentence in the simple past tense and again, start with your subject, use did not, but then use the base verb. So notice no ed here in the negative. Now, you might also notice some people using the contraction form. So they'll combine did not into didn't. I've used that in my example here. The insincere apology didn't heal the breach between friends. Here we're going back to that third or fourth definition where we're really talking about repairing a relationship here. So one person maybe did, I'm sorry, right? Or it doesn't sound like that person's really meaning the words that they're saying. So that's an example, one way to make an insincere apology. Finally, let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple past tense. To do that, start with did, then you're going to have your subject, and then the base verb. Again, don't use the ed form of the verb in the yes or no question. Here's my last example. Did aloe vera heal your sunburn? Again, back to that meaning, restoring to health. Now let's move on and make some sentences in the simple present. We use the simple present to talk about habits and routines. We also use it to discuss facts. In the simple present, we must pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, then in the affirmative, you just use the base verb. So we'll have subject, base verb. But if your subject is he, she, or it, we need to add an S to the end of the verb. You can see that in my first example here. It says, time heals all wounds. Now, when you hear that word time, right, you might be thinking of a length of time, right? But time as a noun in this sentence is singular. So that's why you can see the S on the end of the verb here. Now, this is a sentiment that many people believe. Others would disagree with it. And I think even sometimes researchers, psychiatrists, psychologists might have some examples where, yeah, the as time goes, it doesn't always make things better, but for some people, they believe this to be a fact. Now let's take a look at a negative sentence. To do this, again, we pay attention to our subject. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use do not and then the base verb. But if the subject is he, she, or it, we'll use does not and then the base verb. You might also see the contraction, so do not can be combined to don't, and does not can be combined into the contraction doesn't. Let's take a look at another example. Prisons don't heal drug addiction. Okay. Um, I have seen a number of people working with prison reform say something that is quite similar to this, right? It is not restoring people to health. It is not helping them get rid of their need, desire, or addiction. Finally, let's look at a yes or no question in the simple present. To do this, start with do or does, whichever form matches your subject. That subject comes next. Then you want to use the base verb. I do like to point out to my students, notice the only time I'm adding an S to the end of the verb is in the affirmative when my subject is he, she, or it. Let's take a look at my last example. Do these sores heal? So this might be a question a medical professional asks their patient. They might be observing, again, some type of sore, maybe the skin is broken in a place, and again, they're kind of asking about this habit or routine. Is this something that heals and gets better, or is this kind of always in this state or always in this condition? Now, let's take a moment and talk about some words that are related to our verb heal. And the first word we're going to discuss is the noun healer. Many times, if you see that suffix er on the end of a verb, you can know that this is going to be related to a person or thing that, and we can look back to the base verb. So it might not surprise you to know that we're going to talk about 3 definitions for this noun healer. One way the noun gets used is to talk about a person who seeks to cure diseases or heal injuries, but it's usually in connection to someone who isn't a trained medical professional. So, not what we might consider traditional or conventional medical training. So, an example of this in a sentence might be she is a self described spiritual healer. Right? So, um, there are people with a number of different beliefs. And here we might be talking about someone who believes they have maybe special powers to help others recover from diseases, injuries, or illnesses. A second way to use the noun healer is to talk about a person or thing that mends or repairs something. An example of this: Neosporin was my mom's go-to healer whenever we had a cut. Right? So this is describing a type of ointment that is used on scrapes and cuts, and I think the idea is that it helps the skin kind of close back, kind of restore it into its healthy state. And that is something my brother and I experienced a lot as children. A third way to use the noun healer is to talk about anything that alleviates distress or anguish. So, again, kind of think about like really deep grief, emotional pain here for this third definition. An example of this: is time the best healer? Right? So, kind of going back to one of my earlier examples, and again, there are people who believe yes, after it may depend on the length of time, but eventually, like we're all going to feel better or be better. We're going to recover from whatever. Uh, maybe negative, bad experience we had. But not everyone agrees with that, and that's okay. Another word you might encounter is a heal all. This is used as a noun, and we're really talking about something that others regard as a universal remedy or a panacea, right? So you might hear it more commonly called a cure all, but you may still encounter this word. So, an example of this in a sentence, they talk about CBD oil as a heal all, but there are many different formulations. So I know a few years ago, um, where I live, this was being sold in all sorts of places. People were talking about it kind of with this idea it can help you with this problem or with this illness. But again, many medical professionals, researchers, and such were like, whoa, 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 all of this is not the same. So I took this sentence from something where someone was trying to warn people that there are potential dangers to it. One last word for us today. It's the adjective healable. This is something that is capable of being healed. An example of this: this injury is completely healable, right? Something you want to hear from a medical professional if you or a loved one is experiencing some type of injury, right? You want to know, like, I'm going to return back to good health and in no time. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.